Daniel, this has been such a weird few weeks for Nintendo fans, right? Because they're announcing everything but the Switch 2. Like a few weeks ago, we got Alarmo, then we got the Nintendo Switch Online playtest program, and now we've got Nintendo Music dropping out of nowhere. And this is a smartphone music app specific to Nintendo Switch Online members that's basically a Nintendo soundtrack streaming app. And so I figured I'd corral you really quick to get some first impressions on how we're feeling about this thing. So I want to hear your initial thoughts. Have you had any time to kind of play around with this app yet?
I've been poking around with this, and I've noticed that there's the weirdest selection of games that they've chosen to launch with this. Like there are some, there's obviously a lot from the Switch era, but then there's some from a single titles from N64 or GameCube or Game Boy Advance rather. Yeah, it's been a weird collection to look at. I love how looking at all these, I'm reminded of way back then when I would have some music downloaded to my iTunes, and I would try to find any relevant screenshot to relate to the game.
Right.
And it looks like that's what they did here. Just every song is just some kind of screenshot that looks like just that portion of the game. It's like you just put the album cover. That's totally fine too.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they didn't need to go that in detail for having a specific screenshot per track. And it's weird because you're so right. They did go into that much detail for the screenshot portion, but then there are aspects of this app that are missing that detail where it really needs it, such as the fact that there are no composer credits. None of the individual composers are credited in the each individual soundtrack. So that's a little disappointing, even though they're willing to go all the way on stuff like screenshots. It's weird, right?
Nintendo's very weird about crediting creators in some ways.
That's so true.
And I know John has talked about this in the past before, but even with music composers, we don't even know who does music as well as who's actually making certain games at some point. And that's just kind of odd that it extends to an app like this too. It's not that hard to to get their names on there as credits.
Yeah, it's really a shame that they passed up on that. But for those watching out there who haven't had a chance to check out the app yet, let's run through really quickly what the soundtracks are at launch. And so right now, there are 23 soundtracks that have launched with this app today. They are already promising they're going to add more over time. But like we said, this is a really weird collection, so it goes all the way back to the NES, and we'll start there. We've got Metroid, the Famicom Disk System version of Metroid, and then the original Super Mario Bros. For Game Boy, we've got Dr. Mario and Kirby's Dream Land 1. For Super NES, Donkey Kong Country 1 and Yoshi's Island. N64 has Star Fox 64 and Ocarina of Time. Game Boy Advance has Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade. GameCube with Metroid Prime, DS with Nintendogs, and of all games, Tomodachi Collection, which is really cool. The Wii has Super Mario Galaxy 1 and then various Wii channels like the Me channel, the News channel, the Everybody Votes channel, and stuff like that. And then the Switch is what has the bulk of the music, as you said earlier. It's got Animal Crossing New Horizons, Kirby Star Allies, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Pikmin 4, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Splatoon 3, Super Mario Odyssey, and finally, Zelda Breath of the Wild. So, this is a pretty decent spread of music at launch, but man, some of these selections are so weird. We've got Dr. Mario for Game Boy, but not for NES? What? Why specifically choose the Game Boy version, right?
I have no idea. It's such a unique mix of games, and it's so interesting that I see they added, of all things for Game Boy Advance, there's a lot of great games that have great music in that era, but then it's only Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade that's in there, and they added all. I remember it was specifically exactly 100 tracks in the sound test, and they added every single one, including some. There are some tracks in here that you can't get unless you connect this to that bonus disc that came with Mario Kart Double Dash. You would download it was its own version of DLC. And it has some songs in there that are remixes from past Fire Emblem games, like Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, which is really funny. And it's funny enough in the album itself. Those are some of the tracks that have no art on it because they have nothing to show for that.
Yeah, and so that's another example of this app going in really hard on some of the places where it counts. Some of these soundtracks are genuinely exhaustive, but then on others, like Splatoon 3, for example, and this info comes from ANTYYTNA on Blue Sky, but Splatoon 3 is specifically missing the tracks that are going to be in the side order Splatoon's album release. So, I imagine to drive more sales of that release. But so they were careful to exclude some tracks where they feel like they might be able to squeeze, I guess, some album sales out of it, by not including those tracks here in the app. But by and large, I've been poking around and doing a little hunting and searching, and by and large, it does seem like the majority of these soundtracks are pretty exhaustively complete, if not necessarily all of them.
Yeah, they're not even like complete. They're in the most unique categories, the way that Nintendo would do. Like you can search by characters like Bowser or Zelda or Cappy for some reason.
Yeah.
And then there's like specific ones that are Ocarina of Time. There's songs, Ocarina of Time dungeons specifically.
Right.
It's just funny how they kind of categorize these in a certain ways. Like there's moods to like for break or for good night or for walking or running.
Yeah.
It's cute what they've done with that sort of thing, but it's weird to think how this list might grow in the future. Like what games are they going to add? Because they can just add literally anything from their entire history of games, as they've shown from this starter pack here.
Yeah, I'm a little worried what we're going to be looking at is kind of a, virtual console-esque drip feed where, once every few weeks, maybe we'll get like Super Mario Brothers 3, and then a few weeks later we'll get Majora's Mask, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be more of like a adding them in collections. Like maybe we'll get 5 Zelda games at once one day, and then a few weeks later we'll get a Mario release with like 4 Mario albums. Like who can say exactly how this is going to be done? But I will say that it's weird. This is a very Nintendo way to do this. I was actually just talking with John not too long ago about how crazy it is that Nintendo hasn't monetized their music somehow, because there are so many ways they could, because people love Nintendo music and video game music, and so now they're doing it because it is exclusive to NSO members, which is kind of an interesting way to do it. But at the same time, there are other ways they could have done it. I've already been seeing comments like, why didn't they just put their music on Spotify? Nintendo, be normal. Why can't you just do this in a normal way? But it is kind of cool that they're doing this, even if it is in a very kind of atypical Nintendo way, right?
I hope this is them training themselves to not release game after game, week after week, or month after month after they did as far back as like the Wii era. Please release more titles in bulk, and in this case soundtracks, because I don't really the soundtrack isn't as important as the game itself, so I'm not like going to be super like eagle-eyed over this to see how many soundtracks are released at a time. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I hope that they don't do anything else with this. Like I guess one fear I had was like, if they're gonna have their music officially in an app somewhere where you can listen to it, like what if they crack down on YouTube or something and you can't use those soundtracks for video background music or something? Like that's always been something I know we've been able to do pretty freely. But if they take away that kind of thing, like there's a lot of videos that we have that everyone has that in our circle that uses Nintendo music in their background. I'm just like, oh no, now you can't use that because you gotta go on the app and listen to those. You go to Nintendo Music if you want to listen to that music. Oh boy.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, and I too obviously share that concern. And speaking as someone, everybody in our audience, they typically know that I'm a huge video game music guy, so it'll surprise no one for me to say that I stream video game music on YouTube all the time, whether I'm working or doing chores or whatever. I'm constantly listening to video game music, including Nintendo music, and it's not that hard to find on YouTube at the moment. Nintendo music specifically. I mean, yes, they have done some takedowns here and there, but by and large, if you want to find it, you can. And so I am wondering if this is going to lead to a more hardcore, widespread crackdown of Nintendo music on YouTube. And of course, not only is that going to upset casual listeners, but as you said, Daniel, it could pose potentially, a real problem for, content creators like us who use that music in the background of their videos. So I'm a little bit I think this is cool that they're doing something with their music, but I'm a little worried that it could lead to, kind of a backlash in the YouTube space.
They can't take away my Wii music listening in the background. They have so much here for the Wii, like the photo channel, the weather channel. I
know.
They're some of the most chill and relaxing music from the best era of like background, like not needed, but very much appreciated music playing ambiently back there. Because, there's, I don't know. I'm just hoping that they don't. Oh my gosh, I'm just checking it right now. The Check Me Out channel. Who remembers the Check Me Out channel?
I completely forgot about that.
The Everybody Votes. I love the music for Everybody Votes channel when you're making a song, when you're suggesting a question. Everyone listens to that song. That one is super chill.
Yep.
Like even right now, I'm remembering all these songs. I really hope that this is something that we can just like not take that. I hope it doesn't get that serious where we're fearful of things happening with our music online. Because I know Nintendo cracks down on their certain properties in weird ways at random times, in points in time. So yeah, I'm just. It's nice that there's a little app to put them all together, but it's relatively very small right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just how consistently they add new albums, at what rate they add new albums. Like if this is something that they kind of remember to do every few months, that's not going to cut it. This is going to be, need to be something that sees, if not, I'm not saying I'm going to expect weekly updates. I think that would be ideal, but I'm not going to say that I expect them to commit to that. But at least I want to say bi-monthly at the very least, or otherwise people are just going to forget about it.
I hope Nintendo sees how many people are listening to each song, and they see how many people are listening to music from Metroid Prime, like Phendrana Drifts. That one's going to get a high view count, or a high listen count rather.
And it does seem as though, as idiosyncratic and weird as this soundtrack selection is right now, it does seem as though they put some thought into some fan-focused stuff, like again with the Wii channels. That's not something that I can imagine that they would just say, oh yeah, let's just do the Wii channels just because. They have to know that people really, fans really specifically loved the system level music from that era and chose to be exhaustive about that in particular. And other things, like having both the NES and Famicom Disk System versions of Metroid, because those soundtracks are ostensibly pretty different, at least in terms of the tones using to make them. And so that there is some fan-focused stuff here, and some other cool stuff here, like there's a spoiler toggle, which I know there are probably some people out there like, music spoilers, get out of here. But no, I think that's a pretty legitimate thing, and if there's a game that they add that you haven't played yet, and you don't want spoilers in the track names, you can hide that game's track info from the app, or from your version of the app, and then you won't get spoiled on the track names, which is pretty cool. Same thing with there's an extension thing where it doesn't support every track, but most of the tracks, it seems, can be extended to either 15, 30, or 60 minutes long, which, hey, as someone who is quote-unquote guilty of listening to a particular VGM song on repeat for like an hour plus, that's a really cool feature, I think.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody has played Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and so there's some bits in there. I know that was one of the examples that you can prevent spoilers from that game specifically. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely been moments in the past, even very recently, where I listened to like a 15-minute loop of, was it Bramble Blast from Donkey Kong Country 2? Because I don't know, there's just like, I didn't want to really watch anything, and there's nothing else for me to like turn on, so I just look for that and just have it in the background as I work on stuff. Just a little mindlessly, but yeah, it's always great background music to have, and I guess that's what they're going for with these extended versions. Like they have put more thought into it than other people might have thought, and I hope that kind of level of attention continues for whatever else they want to add to this service.
Yeah, I really hope they are active in terms of updating it and really, kind of paying attention to it and polishing it. As someone who's been listening to video game music since he was basically a kid, it's been really cool to see the legitimization of VGM in the West. Like, believe me, you VGM fans out there don't know how easy you have it compared to what it was like when I was a kid. Like, you had to import CDs from Japan. Like, there was no way to easily get video game music in the West. And now it's like, it's just taken as standard that we have video game music concerts. Now we have Nintendo officially releasing their app, their music in an app for streaming. And I like that they're appreciating the fact that fans don't just want to hear the modern stuff, that there are fans of like classic chiptune out there. So they're adding NES and Game Boy music and stuff. And so I guess just anecdotally, for someone like me who's been along for the VGM ride for my whole life, it's been so cool to see it blow up in the West the way it has. But they do need to add the composer credits. That's a real sticking point for me.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of video game music for as long as I can remember. I remember in Nintendo Power magazine, I would see every now and then they would have like their catalogs, and I really wanted to get the Paper Mario soundtrack way back then. Because there's some music, literally there are some games where there was music I loved listening to. I would just savor listening to those songs, and I would just specifically play through the game and just kind of hang around those areas, or even some like boss fights that would play really cool music. in games like Paper Mario or Tales of Symphonia. And we didn't have the option to have, as easy as just going to the store and buying the CD or soundtrack as we have that option now, or going on YouTube and streaming it. Like way back then, the internet wasn't that powerful yet, and now we have something where we could just download an app and have all these songs at our disposal. And I'm glad that people can kind of experience these sort of things, because I guess, as you mentioned, there's a greater appreciation for video game music these days than before. Like music is music. It doesn't matter like what you're listening to. That sort of thing is made by somebody, and they're very catchy tunes. Sometimes more catchy than things you would catch on the radio. And that's why every time I'm at a party and someone asks me, what kind of music do you listen to? It's like, I'm cooked now, because it's like, I like listening to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild soundtrack, and then there's another whole can of worms of like, there's no music in there, and then that's a whole conversation starter right there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it remains to be seen how often they're going to update this app and what soundtracks they'll add. But I'm certainly curious. I know we all are, and as the resident like VGM hardcore enthusiast over here, I'm so glad that I was around to do this discussion with you when this thing dropped, because this just came out of nowhere. And this is like a couple of days after Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. Like, I don't know what's going on at Nintendo right now, but they've got some cool stuff cooking. But they're announcing everything except the one thing that we're all waiting for, of course. And we'll see if that thing is going to be next, or if we're going to get something else weird and off the wall like this first. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I can't believe Xenoblade was literally just yesterday as we're doing this, and
that's crazy.
The news flow is crazy. Like, this all these little bits of news, we could just have it in its own little weird little direct. But
I know.
No, we're just going casually announcing these on social media. It's crazy.
It's so weird. Yeah, and I don't know why I said a couple of days ago, yeah, it's been a weird news week. But yes, it was just yesterday they've got Xenoblade X. So crazy stuff. But, well, I think that probably wraps it up for us here. Anything else you want to mention about Nintendo music?
Let me know in the comments what your favorite Wii channel music is, so we can talk about it.
Yes, definitely. And also let us know which soundtracks you most want to see added to the app in the future. We want to hear about what all your favorite Nintendo soundtracks are, too.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, as always, thanks everyone so much for watching. If you love what we do here at GVG, please do remember we have a Patreon, patreon.com/GVGaming, where you can support us for as little as just $1 a month, which gives you access to our incredible Discord community. We have other perks that you can go check out. But hey, if you can't support us there, that's totally fine. If you just like and subscribe, every little bit really does help. We really appreciate all your help, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Till we meet again.